All right, good morning, everybody. I will give everybody till 10:45 to kind of step on in, and then we will kind of get started for the sake of time. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Facilitating a Higher Education Response to Exploitation on Campus, Exploring Internet Facilitated Exploitation and Sex Trafficking Among College Students. My name is Bridget, and I will be your moderator for today on for this session. As a reminder, the session will be recorded. All recordings will be available to you through the app for the next 3 months following the conference. As you watch this session, we ask that you please use the Whova engagement features. If you look to the right of your screen, you will see the Q&A, polls, and chat and community tabs. Please use the chat and reserve all questions for the Q&A tab. Please, again, if you have any questions, especially since this is a larger group, please put them in the Q&A tab. That way it doesn't get lost in the chat. I will do my best to answer or to ask all questions so Stacy can answer them. All participants are muted and cannot and should not be able to unmute unless the presenter and the host, unmute you. You can also select live transcription is available for live audio captioning and full transcript. Please also notice the take notes feature under the session title. You can store your notes and ideas from the session here. Your notes are only yours and will not appear for anyone else. When the session is over, we ask that you please go to the conference evaluation and provide feedback on how the session went. I have put the evaluation link in the chat and we'll add it again at the end of the session. If you're applying for CEs, you need to complete the evaluation. So we're ready to begin. We should already be recording, but if everybody could, please welcome Stacy sorry if I pronounce your last name wrong, Lefevers. She is from Virginia Commonwealth University. All right, Stacy, the floor is yours.
Okay, I kept trying to unmute and seeing myself in a different screen. Yes, my last name is Lefevers. You got that correct. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. All right. Again, I'm Stacy Lefevers. Thank you everyone for being here with me today. Just a quick content note and reminder that this presentation covers topics such as trafficking, sex work, and coercive relationships. So please always take care of yourself in the ways that you need. For some background, colleges and universities don't routinely measure the prevalence of sex trafficking or sex work on campus climate surveys, but there are a number of reasons why college students may be vulnerable to trafficking or exploitation. First, the sheer financial burden, the tuition costs of college. The fact that this is a transitional period that can bring about mental health challenges, along with the fact that students are already at high risk for sexual violence during this time. So at VCU, Dr. Conley conducted a campus climate survey in 2018 and 2019 that actually found 2% of grad students and 3% of undergrads reported experiences that met the definition of sex trafficking while in college. When I began this study in 2022, we were still learning about the impact of COVID on trafficking. So I was interested to see if that particular context could have any impact on survey responses. We did see a slight increase in online trafficking recruitment during lockdown, which basically told us that those who were recruiting people into trafficking were adapting to that environment of lockdown. We also saw a bit of intimate partner recruitment increase, but even in general times, not during COVID, not during lockdown, about 40% of trafficking survivors are recruited by an intimate partner. So, with this study, my primary goal was to gain a clear understanding of what sexual exploitation entails within the college setting. So to achieve this, I used a mixed method design focused on first measuring the prevalence of exploitation. And that involved using an existing campus survey about mental health, trauma, and substance use, because right now our campus is not currently conducting a climate survey. And then I used purposive sampling to invite individuals who had experienced certain situations to participate in one-on-one interviews. And this is really where I hope to get at some of the nuances between what might be considered exploitation and consensual sex work and how students are defining that for themselves. This is a bar chart of the general survey findings. In total, the survey reached 455 juniors and seniors at VCU, looking back on their time in college. What we see here represented is the total eligible sample, meaning anyone who had had any one of these experiences listed, and then compared to the interview sample who I spoke with. So arrangement relationships, I had this question yesterday. I wanted to address it right off the bat. Relationships are also called sugar dating, and that's where a young person is paired with a wealthy older benefactor and is paid to go on dates, spend time with them, and many times engage in a sexual relationship. So that type of really relationship is advertised to college students as a way to make money to help with tuition costs. And the reason for asking students about this was the potential for exploitation that lies within that inherent power dynamic. Live streaming was just short form for internet facilitated sex work, not necessarily a sugar dating relationship. In terms of demographics, the majority of these folks were cisgender women, non-white, LGBTQ, with an average age of 21 years old. And those demographics were the same among the interview participants. Usually in campus sexual violence work, we see a lot of representation from white, straight young women, but in this case, the folks I interviewed were majority non-white and not straight. So key findings from the prevalence numbers, we did see a slight increase in undergrads reporting participating in these arrangement relationships. And then more of a notable increase in those who say they experienced trafficking up from 2019. These are some of the major themes that came out of the interviews. So, glamorization came from the idealized picture of sugar dating that participants see on social media versus the reality of actually trying it out or hearing stories of friends who did. Social media portrayals of sugar dating were described as too good to be true and portrayed sugar dating as a lifestyle choice rather than a side job. This is a newer portrayal of sugar dating. Students were actually seeing tutorials online for how to get into this lifestyle. And even though it was described as too good to be true, um, interviewees reported seeing the appeal of trying something like this. So, commodification, this theme really arose from participants' awareness of their inherent financial opportunities, either through camming, selling photos, or sugar dating. Overall, the primary motivator for participants to sell images or try sugar dating was financial insecurity. It became clear that economic hardship was the driving force between these transactions. In some examples, financial insecurity was defined as someone who was in need of short-term spending money, but others described having friends without stable housing or access to food. In some cases, when people were using these payments from sugar dating or from internet facilitated sex work to fund their basic needs, they found that their autonomy became limited. So, one participant's anonymity was compromised when selling pictures and camming. The buyer used the student's real identity as blackmail to force the student into recording acts that they previously refused to do. So this theme started to display a little bit of a slippery slope, where work that began as lucrative and empowering, then unfortunately it turned into something that was forced. This theme also touched on coercive sexual relationships that students didn't know how to get out of, and even academic coercion on the part of a teaching assistant. So while these situations may not rise to the definition of sex trafficking, the interviews highlighted controlling and violent behaviors that no one should have to face. Ultimately, participants expressed what they wished they had known prior to these experiences, as this knowledge would have better equipped them to navigate such situations. Their needs were varied but fairly basic and range from sex ed to guaranteed housing on campus. Sex ed, along with education on healthy relationships, consent, and IPV, would touch on some of the issues that students were describing. Online communication safety was something that emerged between the lines of the interviews as students typically describe their approach to online safety as trial and error or something learned along the way. So I do think they could do with a more open dialogue on internet privacy and security, as those things were really causing a lot of anxiety. And finally, having basic needs met would reduce the risk for violence for someone who had to turn to dating apps for a place to stay. This information could potentially be used to advocate for housing security and food assistance for students on campus who don't have that. So this was a very high level overview about the takeaways from this study, and I'm very grateful for you all coming to join me today. Thank you.
Awesome. And while we have a couple more minutes, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A.
And I did want to note that Alexis asked about will I be speaking to how marginalized and vulnerable populations are specifically targeted for sex trafficking. And she did mention first gen and international students. And the first gen and international students, that is something that I want to go back into my data set and really look at because Alexis is absolutely right. Um, I'm a little bit limited in the data set because it is an existing survey. And so I've actually been trying to go back and find if I can get to that first gen status. So that's an excellent question. I appreciate it.
Yes, and there was Barbara asked a question. She said, "Will you be making any distinctions between sex trafficking, sex work, and human trafficking on college campuses?" I do not believe you had made any kind of bold distinctions on that, but also I just wanted to kind of put that out there just for you to know, and if you have any more answers for that one.
Sure. Yes. So the reason for asking a couple of different questions in terms of internet facilitated sex work, arrangement relationships, and sex trafficking was to create that distinction between what was consensual and what is a coercive, forced situation. A lot of times in human trafficking, we see a conflation between consensual sex work and human trafficking or sex trafficking. And we wanted to avoid that in terms of survey questions.
And we also got another question. I am not going to say the first name because I cannot say that correctly, so I don't want to butcher that first name. Last name was Smart. They asked if there is any data on barriers to help seeking based on the nature of the exploitation and fear of victim blaming in situations like this.
Absolutely. Thanks for that question. I did go a bit into that with my interviews, and for those who are participating in consensual sex work, um, there did not seem to be a very good avenue for help seeking in that situation. Although in our case on our campus, our Title IX folks are very non-judgmental, and we even have like some human trafficking training with our campus police. And so I think folks would be a lot more open to helping students in those situations than they might think. But there is an undercurrent of shame. And so students who are participating in something like sex work, did seem to be hesitant to seek out help when things turned into more exploitative situations. Thanks for that question.
Right, so I'm not seeing any more questions, and we do have 1 minute left. If you wanted to share your email in the chat box, Stacy, if possible. Um, but if not, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And then please remember to fill out those evaluations, especially if you are going for your CEs, you do need those to get credit for that. So those evaluations are very important. The link is posted in the chat box, but I will post it one more time. Awesome. And thank you everybody for attending, and hopefully we will see you at the morning games.
Thank you all.